Can telling the truth heal us, not just emotionally, but physically? Today, while I create just for the sake of creating, I'd like to explore how trauma and self-abandonment contribute to chronic illness and disconnection, and how returning to our inner truth can be a profound path toward wholeness. Did you know that lying can be damaging to your health? The great news is that the reverse is true, and telling the truth and learning to be true to yourself has tremendous healing power for all kinds of illness and disease. Researchers Brink, Lee, and Carney at Berkeley found that whether big lies, small lies out of politeness, or one of the trickiest lies to catch, lies we tell ourselves, no matter the type of lie, they all take a toll on us. I encourage you to check out their research. It's quite compelling. Telling the truth about who we are, what we've lived through, and what we need can quite literally begin to heal us. This idea is something that both Dr. Gabor Maté and Martha Beck speak to in depth. In The Myth of Normal, Gabor Maté explains how trauma and suppressed emotion don't just shape our mental health, they show up in our bodies. Chronic illness, autoimmune disorders, even cancers can have roots in unresolved emotional pain and lifelong patterns of self-denial. He says, quote, "One of the things many diseases have in common is inflammation, acting as kind of a fertilizer for the development of illness. We've discovered that when people feel threatened, insecure, especially over an extended period of time, our bodies are programmed to turn on inflammatory genes." So you can understand that this is why trauma and emotions that haven't been resolved cause disease. And there's a whole lot of data on not just people with extensive childhood trauma seeing higher instances of very specific diseases, but he also explains that this is the reason that we see higher incidence of disease in oppressed groups of people. And research supports these concepts, as does our own logic. So if trauma causes disease and oppression causes trauma, then we can pretty easily logically track that relation. So no matter where the trauma is from, even if it's something small that most people wouldn't consider trauma, but it's caused you pain, that's still trauma. And what do all these types of traumas have to do with lying versus telling the truth, you might be wondering. I will get to that very shortly. But first, let's look at some of Martha Beck's research on truth-telling. So, in The Way of Integrity, Martha Beck describes how living out of alignment with our inner truth fractures us. She shares that integrity and being honest with ourselves and others isn't about morality. It's about wholeness, about bringing our outer lives into harmony with our inner knowing. She also explains that though there are a variety of reasons illness can happen, when someone isn't being true to themselves, it does always come with a physical cost, whether a serious disease, maybe being accident prone, more susceptible to colds. In her qualitative research, just from her clients, she said that usually when these things are resolved, those things go away. And moreover, she has seen miraculous healings time and time again when the people come into alignment with their truth and begin to live in integrity. And this is where Gabor Maté's research comes back into play. So, not only has he demonstrated the connection between trauma and disease, he also describes 7 things that are a result of trauma. I want to list these for you now. Number 1, separation from self. Number 2, disconnection from others. Number 3, an altered worldview. So thinking that the world is a dangerous place and unwelcoming, rather than thinking that you belong and it's a relatively safe place to be. Number 4 is lifelong pain, including physical pain. Number 5, trauma has an effect on your cognitive development. Number 6, people with trauma tend to carry personal shame, just generally, walking around with it. And truth-telling really will help that one. I'll get to that in a second. And number 7 is difficulty being present. So truth-telling really can be a medicine for each of these things. So if we take that first one, separation from self, when you start to get back in the habit of admitting what you really want and who you are, and maybe not even the habit, maybe you're so far from yourself that you aren't actually in touch with what you want and what you want to do. You've been living your life for other people so long, or to look good according to our socialized views and our cultural values. You've been doing that for so long that you might be totally separated. So getting back in touch with your own truth and what you really want, and I'll provide an exercise from Martha for that later, but that is a direct way to help this thing that trauma causes, that is one of the reasons that we experience so many of those disease-causing elements as well. At least that's what I believe when I look at both of these pieces of research. So truth-telling for number 2, as is concerned with the disconnection from others, I think personally people can tell when you're lying to them, and you can tell when people are lying to you. It might be very subtle. Sometimes you might not want to believe that they're lying to you, so you choose to believe their lies, but it ranges from glaringly obvious to just a little whisper of intuition that they're not telling the truth. And when that happens to you, you're going to naturally put up walls between you and that person. And when you're the one lying, you're separating yourself from the world. You're not able to fully relax and be yourself around that person because you have to keep up the web. And it's so isolating that it just amplifies the pain that you've been feeling from the trauma. And once you step into that bravery of being able to speak truths, even when they're scary, you might find that not only is it not as scary as you thought, it might have some consequences, sure, but on the other side of those consequences is wholeness, and the people that either stay in your life or are drawn into your life, you're going to feel a whole new level of connection that you didn't otherwise. So for his number 3 symptom, the altered worldview, I believe truth-telling goes along with this one and the difficulty being present, those 2 things. I think with truth-telling, you start to be able to see reality for what it is. This is also kind of connected to the personal shame, because when you've been through trauma, you start to tell yourself this lie that it's your fault. At least in my experience, you start to feel ashamed for something that you have no right, well, not no right, but you have no reason to be ashamed for, something that was not your fault. The nature of trauma is just that shame follows you around and you can't get away from it. But being able to really look at that situation to tell the truth about your trauma itself, whether journaling, to a therapist, to someone you trust, to be able to speak it out loud, it really starts to take away that shame. And in turn, as you start to dissolve that, you'll notice that you're able to be more present and you're able to see the world in a better light. You're able to start seeing reality a little closer to what it is, instead of the distorted view based on something painful that happened to you. So, both of these brilliant minds, Martha and Gabor Maté, they point to the same wound, the cost of abandoning ourselves. And they also point to the same path of healing, which is returning to the truth. But as you know, telling the truth can be pretty terrifying in a lot of cases, especially if, like so many of us, we learned early on that our truth wasn't welcome, that being ourselves might lead to rejection, punishment, or worse, abandonment. And for people who are experiencing oppression or have someone dangerous in their lives, Martha Beck even expresses to proceed with caution when who you tell the truth to. So I think that's wise. She says that if your safety is at risk, by all means, keep lying to those people. But for many people in history, and she kind of implies that this might, once you get used to telling the truth, you might take these steps as well. Many people in history have changed the world by fighting oppression. They found that they could no longer suppress their truth and suppress their true nature anymore, and they were willing to risk their lives for the truth, willing to risk their lives for what they knew to be right. So that can kind of put into perspective some of the fear we experience when telling smaller truths that won't put us in physical danger. But we still lie. Why? I guess a number of reasons. Because we're socialized to be polite, or because of the way we interacted with authority figures as a child. We're quite simply afraid to get in trouble, even if that trouble is nowadays merely a look of disapproval or judgment. But why do we lie to ourselves? I think it's because often admitting the truth to ourselves means that we'd have to shift almost everything about our lives. And that's the scary part. Sticking with what we know is much more comfortably uncomfortable. And I think we lie to ourselves sometimes because, frankly, we just don't give ourselves enough time to get quiet, and we don't give ourselves enough permission to feel into what we really want. We think that others' needs and desires are more important than our own, as if we don't value ourselves enough to give ourselves permission to discover and live our own truth. But we really, really have to stop that, because when you put other people first at the expense of your own needs, you're not just damaging yourself, you're damaging them too. It's not a good situation for them either. And weirdly, when you put yourself first and take care of your needs and do what you need to do, you become an even more powerful catalyst for goodness and change in the world. It's amazing how this works, and even in the closest relationships to you and beyond that. It's almost contagious in a good way. So, when we're so used to lying to ourselves and others, we seem to have adapted to this way of living that's almost true, not quite true. And it appears easier, but it's actually making us sick. We become who we think we need to be, not who we really are. And then slowly, often unconsciously, we start to split from our inner world more and more as we grow up. And that split, that's where the sickness begins. And we hold it in our shoulders, our guts, our nervous systems, our cells, because it turns out our body remembers the truth, even when we've forgotten it. But the really good news is, no matter how long we've been doing this, we can come back to wholeness, and we can do it much quicker than you might think. And the journey there, I think, might be a lot more fun than you'd think. At first, maybe we come back to ourselves through small, honest moments, just allowing ourselves to feel what we feel, to say no when we want to say no, and to say yes to what brings us alive, to what's calling, to stop pretending. Even silence can be a lie. To start telling the truth about things that have been bothering us when we've just been letting them stew because we don't think that it's our place to speak up. It is our place to speak up. If your inner truth is calling to you and you're being silent and you're not saying something that is true for you, go ahead and say it. Just do this one experiment, say it, and see what happens to you and to your life around you. If you end up doing this, I really, really want to hear a full story in the comments. But anyway, other small ways to start. If you're not really ready to say those kind of truths yet, you can journal. And saying one honest sentence to maybe someone you trust, someone safe, can start with a therapist. You can just start paying attention to sensations in your body when you override yourself and when you listen to yourself. Notice the difference in that. Another thing you can do is spend time in nature or in your creative flow. And doing those things, kind of shutting your brain down, allows who you are and what you're longing for to kind of surface. That is one of the ways that you can start if you're not ready to go big. Because if you've been living a life that looks good from the outside, but you feel hollow or tight or sick inside, you're definitely not alone. And you're not broken. You're likely just too far from your truth. If you've been through some really big stuff, the best way through and the best way out of those trauma symptoms is to tell the truth. Tell the truth to yourself. Tell the truth to someone you love and trust. Notice what it is. See it for what it is. The ability to go in and see and look at it in a way where you feel safe and not re-traumatized, just to acknowledge it, is a huge step on the path to healing. And you can also start small. You can just say one real thing today and notice how you feel afterwards. And if that resonates with you, say maybe one thing that's real but it's a little scarier, and then keep going. I promise that's what is on the other side of this, and all the truth telling is better than you ever could have imagined. So if this resonated with you, I'd love for you to either subscribe or share it with someone who might need it. And if you're on your own journey of truth telling and healing, I'd love to hear about it. Please keep me updated and let me know. And I am very much enjoying sharing some of these favorite reads with you. But if there's a great book you know about that I need to read and talk about while I paint, I'd love to know about it. Sending you so much love wherever you are.